I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're ranking the Elden Ring bosses of Mt Gelmir from worst to best. I've done videos on Limgrave, Liurnia, Caelid and Dragon Barrow so far. If you're interested in seeing more videos in this series, click the playlist link in the description below. There's only one rule: bosses must have an official boss health bar, nada más. So with that being said, all 10 Mt Gelmir Elden Ring bosses ranked. Let me know your favourite down below. At number 10 we have the magma worm found outside Fort Laid. Straight up, this is one of my least favourite boss fights in the entire game. But why? Well, this magma worm is fought next to a very vast pool of lava, making the arena you find him in very dangerous to traverse. Combined with the magma worm's innate ability to vomit fire and leave its own magma pools in his wake, and you have a boss that is very good at controlling every aspect of its arena. There's nothing more frustrating for me than when this magma worm decides to do its charge attack 3 times in a row because its AI despises the player. Even worse when said charge attack leads to it charging directly back into the lava pool, which takes away any opportunity the player has to attack. I like that it can spew fire beneath itself if you're hugging its legs for too long though, that is a fair trade. I think the main issue I always had with this boss was that it's clearly one of the tougher field bosses in the game, with its health and damage jacked up compared to Makar, but it's found on what I assumed was the main path through Mt Gelmir for the longest time, and it was always convenient to kill it before progressing. Defeating it allows the player to purchase the Magma Breath incantation at the Dragon Communion altar. Not the worst incantation in the world, but it requires a lot of setup to see success with, as the magma pools it spews need to be strategically placed. Plus, a lot of PvE enemies resist fire damage the further into the game you get, so other elements are often considered more interesting. I wish I enjoyed this harder magma worm variant, but the threat of lava due to the arena and its hard to read hitboxes make it a very punishing experience when I don't think it needs to be. At number 9 we have the Kindred of Rot duo found in Seathwater Cave. There are a handful of Elden Ring enemies that I find particularly painful to be around. Royal Revenants, Rune Bears, Stone Imps, but perhaps my least favourite enemies are the Kindred of Rot. They shouldn't even be that hard, they don't have a ton of health, the most they do is jump backwards from your swings, and yet they were designed with one of the most brutal projectile attacks in the game. I don't care how leveled up you are, when the Kindred of Rot decides to use their darts on you, you best hope you know that dodge timing. And that's reflected in this fight. I clearly was strong enough to defeat this boss, and yet those projectiles still threatened to ruin everything. On this playthrough, I could tank the damage, strategically heal, and ultimately survive, but on my original playthrough of Elden Ring, these guys had me in a chokehold I couldn't escape. It's impressive how just adding a second Kindred of Rot makes this pair 10 times deadlier. Grand Cloister flashbacks are inbound. They drop the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation Talisman, which raises a player's attack power by 20% for 20 seconds when poison or rot is procced within the vicinity, and this talisman single-handedly helped me to defeat the Lake of Rot Dragonkin soldier. So because the Kindred of Rot duo had a drop that actually helped in my playthrough, they managed to beat the Magma Worm and not place last on today's list. At number 8 we have Demi-Human Queen Margot, found in the Volcano Cave. While the Demi-Human Queens aren't the most exciting boss type to face, Margot never stood a chance on today's list because she's in the same region as an entirely different Demi-Human Queen who has far more thought put into her moveset and her placement. Take the long way around Mt Gelmir and you'll have already battled Demi-Human Queen Maggie to make it up the mountain. So finding a hidden volcanic cavern, only to discover the boss is a weaker rematch against the same fight you took on earlier? How disappointing is that? She doesn't even have any magic to fall back on like Maggie, instead being similar to Gillica from the Altus Plateau, and her health pool is laughably limited to boot. The only reason Margot doesn't bottom on today's list is because she doesn't actively make me dread her fight. In fact, I didn't even find her on my first playthrough. Volcano Cave was so unmemorable and missable. Defeating her gets you the Jar Cannon, which, while not the best damage dealer in PvE, has been universally accepted in PvP for its high range and its deadly knockback. Fight in any area that has a drop, and a Jar Cannon will most likely take care of your foe. Or so I hear, I don't actually do PvP myself. Margot, I look forward to forgetting you exist after publishing this video. At number 7, we have the Red Wolf of the Champion found in Mt Gelmir's Hero's Grave. Another instance where I find myself incredibly disappointed with which bosses were being reused in Elden Ring during my first playthrough, but that disappointment turned to sheer indifference when I watched my partner play this game for the first time. Mt Gelmir's Hero's Grave was a nightmare for us to navigate. We died in this dungeon more than most other places in the game, and to reach the end only to find the boss a reskin of a previous fight, it just hits different, you know, and not in a good way. The Red Wolf only has an extra 1000 HP or so, meaning the fight is balanced in your favor. He's an even more fragile glass cannon now, and that's a real shame, because I love the original Red Wolf fight, but each subsequent repeat just tarnishes his memory, either with a subpar boss rematch, or with the various lesser Red Wolves found throughout the world that are always accompanied by other normal wolves to gank the player. Now, defeating this boss does give you the Bloodhound Knight Flo's Spirit Ashes, which I personally think is one of the best summons in the game. Flo may have the squishy HP pool of the Bloodhound Knights in-game, but his ability to proc bleed build-up on any enemy that doesn't resist it is priceless. Let's not use any more Red Wolves for the DLC, okay? At number 6, we have the Abductor Virgins found beneath the Volcano Manor. A hidden boss that can only be found by allowing the Rhea Lucaria Virgin Abductor below the elevator to kill you with a grab attack, this trap of patches is the quickest route to Altus Plateau. Personally, I've always been a big fan of this enemy type. I think they're brilliant from an aesthetic perspective, these threatening, demonic Iron Maidens that roll around on rails chasing after their victims. Fighting two at the same time is definitely a difficulty spike though, as both of their weapon variants complement each other extremely well, to the detriment of the player, might I add. The Wheel Virgin prefers to charge forwards at the player, which means it'll likely be your first target during the fight, while the Sickle Virgin prefers to use its chain sickles to create oppressive ranged attacks. They both can spin in place with their weapons outstretched, which is easy enough to avoid by backing off, and if you can dodge their grabs, you can do extra damage to their insides as it's a weak spot. Killing the Abductor Virgins gets you the Inquisitor's Girandol, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which is a fairly powerful spear that procs bleed while gaining a B scaling in Faith at +10, making it a fully viable late game weapon. Not bad for sacrificing a couple virgins. Boom! I just abducted you like the Abductor Virgins in Elden Ring. My goal with this channel is to eventually reach 100,000 subscribers, but for now we're focusing on trying to get to 35,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. If, after you finish this video, you liked what you saw, consider subscribing to the channel. It would really mean a lot to me, and it would really help my channel to grow. You could also consider going the extra mile and becoming a channel member, which gets you early 24-hour access to future videos, as well as a shout out in the description of each video and at the very end of each video as well. So, if any of that piques your fancy, links down below. Back to the list. At number 5, we have the Godskin Noble found in the Volcano Manor. Some may be surprised to see this boss so low on today's list. After all, it's one of the main story fights, so its quality should raise it to top 3 at least, right? But people forget that this is a subjective ranking, and in my subjective opinion, I really dislike the Godskin Noble. For me, this boss tries to have its cake and eat it too, as it wants to bill itself as a slower, larger creature like Smo from Dark Souls 1, which is further implied when you fight the Godskin Apostle, who's the traditional, smaller, faster model of their duo. However, none of the noble's attacks actually reflect this, because he's just as fast, if not faster, than the Apostle. His thrust attacks are pointed and brutal, especially in his enraged state, and unlike the Apostle, who doesn't use his black flame attacks until half health, the noble has no qualms with summoning his flames to help him early on. The most annoying early move is the black flame circle you have to dodge from, which stops you from doing any melee damage to the boss. But hey, phase 1 is learnable, and I do think it is fair. It's his enraged state where the fight loses points for me, be it his Godskin wheel attack where he sonic spin dashes around the room for however long he feels like and no amount of pillars between you and him will stop him from hitting you, or how about his belly thrust that has a 13 frame windup that is insanely difficult to predict and avoid. While the Apostle feels like a boss I can learn and understand, the Noble just feels oppressive and overly brutal. His arena is also pretty cramped, which doesn't help much. He drops the Godskin Stitcher, his signature weapon, and the Noble Presence Ash of War, allowing you to also use his belly move, though you don't get that 13 frame wind-up, silly. I can tell that a lot of thought went into the Godskin Noble fight, which is why I'm not ranking him at the bottom of the list. I'm not that petty, but when the most notable thing I enjoy about his battle is his music, well, that says it all, really. At number 4, we have the ulcerated tree spirit found at Mt Gelmir's minor Erdtree. My favourite tree spirit in the game. I just think the introduction of this foe was perfection during my original playthrough. Prior to getting here, you're used to running into Erdtree avatars, and I had the luck of not finding a single ulcerated tree spirit prior to this moment. So galloping down the hill to the tree, having managed to avoid finger creepers and collected a map fragment, I'm looking for my avatar bestie, only for this tree spirit snake to drop from the sky instead. Fighting this guy for the first time was an exhilarating rush. Sure, after taking on a host of them across the game, the shine has dulled a bit, but this was my first, and it's got a nice large arena to fight in. You can even use Torrent if you want to make distance and become a harder target to hit. It drops the Leaden Hard tier, which temporarily boosts your poise for 10 seconds, allowing you to gain hyper armor from certain damage levels. But more importantly, you get the Cerulean Hidden tier, which eliminates all FP consumption for 15 seconds. What this means is that you can cast any spell, activate any weapon skill, summon any Spirit Ash that relies on FP you want regardless of price, you name it, you can do it. Cerulean Hidden tier plus Terra Magica plus Comet Azure or any other chargeable spell equals devastating damage. Not bad coming from the best ulcerated tree spirit in the game. At number 3, we have Demi-Human Queen Maggie, found at the end of Mt Gelmir's Hermit Village. Maggie is found on the path most people will take up Mt Gelmir, because, admit it, how many of you actually missed the Mt Gelmir ladder near the Abductor Virgins? Unlike the other Demi-Human Queens, Maggie has their regular moveset, while also dabbling in the art of sorcery. She can cast a simple glintstone pebble, and a crystal burst that acts as a shotgun blast to the face up close. Beyond her magic, she's got a high health pool, great damage output, and she's surrounded by a series of smaller demi-humans that need to be taken out to defeat her. Normally, I'm not a fan of bosses that have enemies you need to kill around them, but in this case, I think it fits thematically, and there is also a Site of Grace just past Maggie that allows you to fight her without alerting the entire village. It's those glintstone sorcerers next to her you really need to worry about, as their shards can add up enough damage alongside Maggie's own attacks to get a sneaky kill on you. Defeating her grants you a memory stone, allowing you to add a new spell slot to your repertoire, and very close by you can find the primeval sorcerer Azure, who will grant you the Comet Azure spell, also known as the Kamehameha of Elden Ring. I just respect that Maggie provides a good amount of strategy while not being so difficult that it causes players to full-on rage, and she's leagues better than the other two Demi-Queen bosses, which helps her case tremendously. At number 2, we have the full-grown Falling Star Beast found at the highest peak of Mt Gelmir. If there's a boss that has gone completely underrated in Elden Ring, I truly feel the full-grown Falling Star Beast fits the bill. It's fought in an exceptionally cool arena at the peak of the mountain and a crater where the beast once fell. It's got an incredibly diverse moveset, where the first half of the fight has the usual Falling Star Beast moveset, tusk swipes, charges, the occasional gravity magic where it fashionably tries to impale you with rock spires from the ground. But once it reaches 60% health, it gains two very cool attacks that add a ton to the fight. The first is Reverse Gravity, where it lets loose a roar and creates an AoE around it that, if the player remains in, will cause them to be lifted into the air and slammed back down to the ground. This move is shared with Estelle, Natural Born of the Void, which implies the Falling Star Beasts and Estelle share a connection. Then the beast has a Gravity Ray, a fun laser that you can dodge by either hopping on Torrent and getting close to the boss, or you can use the arena's verticality to your advantage, avoiding the beam as well. With a whopping 13,010 HP, it'll take a while to chip down the Falling Star Beast, but defeating it nets you the Falling Star Beast Jaw, a colossal weapon that was once considered insanely OP. Its poise damage got nerfed in 1.08, which took it down a notch, but I still think it's a valid, if a little repetitive, weapon to fuck around with. The Falling Star Beast was a boss I fully enjoyed retrying until I got myself a win, and it's one of the few bosses in the game that really reminded me of older Dark Souls titles, and I mean that in a positive way. But even then, nobody beats the Lord of the Manor. At number 1, we have Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, the Shard Bearer of Mt Gelmir and Lord of the Volcano Manor. Now, as with any Soulsborne boss that relies on a gimmick to win the fight, Rykard isn't for everyone to enjoy. But compared to fights like Yhorm and the Storm King, I've seen a lot more positivity for Rykard on the whole, which is fabulous. Because this is From Software at their best with their gimmick fights, as the Serpent Hunter has an entire moveset for you to play around with that can damage the boss, as opposed to just one special move that you spam over and over for victory. It's also a valid strength weapon that can be used throughout the rest of the game if you really want to. Phase 1, the God-Devouring Serpent, is a nice taster for the main course. You've got to keep enough distance from the boss to avoid that lava pool beneath it, while also being close enough to land hits with your wind slices while avoiding getting cornered. My main struggle actually came from dodging Rykard's grab attack. I was absolutely atrocious at the timing, leading to a lot of extra damage I really could have avoided. But we're here for Phase 2, that's the real star of the show. From Rykard's campy voice acting that I will never get tired of praising and emulating, "Together we will devour the very gods," to his insane moveset, where on top of his usual attacks he can create magma pools, send skulls that follow a trail before exploding, igniting said trail in the process, or how about him going full blasphemous and summoning his Rancor Storm, plunging the arena into the fiery hells while a large amount of flaming skulls appear to chase you down, all culminating in his weapon skill, Taker's Flames, a classic overhead slam that releases a giant wave of vertical magma energy. Defeating him grants you his Great Rune, which allows you to heal 80 HP plus 7% of your maximum HP per enemy killed, as well as his Remembrance, which you can trade in to get the Blasphemous Blade, one of the most powerful weapons in the game that will never leave the meta, no matter how hard we try. Rykard is without a doubt the best gimmick fight in Soulsborne, and the best fight of Mt Gelmir, period. And that's my list. Which Mt Gelmir fight is your favourite? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of my future videos. My social medias are on screen now, feel free to follow me if you're comfortable. I recommend my Twitter or my Discord. My Twitter is the best place to go though, just trust me on that one. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing, thank you so much. And I will see you guys in the next video. Adios!